So yeah, we're not. She's here. We're not able to get involved. I want to try the speakers with mine. Okay. Why did you have them?
I don't have the cord though that connects.
He's working over there.
Oh, he's working on this?
Yes, he's hooking it up there.
Because that way, if we moved it to doing it here, that's not going to really help us. Hello, hello. Yeah, that is. Where is the sound?
Brandon, you need me to do anything?
Nah, it's all good.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. If folks can please find a seat. I know we are a packed house, which is a great problem to have. And I'm going to step away for a moment. We have some extraordinary women who are about to get started.
You want to test it real quick and make sure it's working?
I can't because now they're up there. Will you stay with me for a minute? Yeah. Let's do it. So there's they're all giving up. We're going to have to like quickly piece on it up there.
Well, as soon as it comes on, this should work. So we're just going to turn that on whenever
Play
that's
this. We're going to do this one. We want to get it on there. I'm not a tech person. I'm over 50. So.
This room's a thing.
So, yeah, you have a few minutes to just troubleshoot with me when it comes on. Yeah.
I am the proud grandmother of 5.
I'm a political scientist.
I'm a playwright. I'm the parent of a 1-year-old, so I never sleep.
I have a doctorate in theology, and I am a survivalist.
I'm fighting for a world in which you can be a woman and still be safe.
I'm a woman who worked for 20 years for a state university. I don't just deserve respect, I demand it.
I'm a mother. Fight for all our girls. I'm a non-profit founder who works every day with women and girls who want out of the sex industry.
I'm a civilian member of law enforcement.
I'm a woman who wishes that when I was young, somebody spoke up for me. And we
Are all people, not products. People should never be bought and sold. We're the survivor leaders of World Without Exploitation.
Every one of us standing here today have been exploited or trafficked.
whether it happens online or offline, healing from sexual exploitation can take a lifetime.
That's why it's time to end online sexual exploitation and pass SESTA.
Changing the law can change the world, but it won't happen without you.
Saying things monotone, looking sad into the camera, but this is actually really, really
We're
messed
going to
up.
start again.
Today you can go on.
Hold on 1 second for us. We're just troubleshooting one tech.
Why don't I get started? I'm going to get started, and then we'll get the PSA up and running. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Good morning. My name is Lauren Hersh. I'm the National Director of World Without Exploitation, our national coalition to combat human trafficking and sexual exploitation. Before we begin, I want to make sure that we say a huge thank you to Senator Portman and his extraordinary team. Their deep passion for ending online exploitation has translated into tireless and impactful work and a really, really phenomenal piece of legislation that we're eager to pass. We want to thank Senator Portman for co-sponsoring this event. We want to thank you, Senator Blumenthal and Senator McCaskill, for your extraordinary work on this really important issue. When we decided that we were going to come to DC on January 11th, Human Trafficking Awareness Day, the response was extraordinary. Survivors were activated immediately, and the reality is, survivors have been leading the charge to pass SESTA from the very, very beginning. In this room, we have leaders from Ohio, from Missouri, and from Connecticut. We have folks from California, Colorado, Minnesota, Missouri, and many, many more. On the other side of the country, we have many people who said, we want to be here, but we can't fly across the country, but we're going to come anyway. And so they gathered together in different places in Seattle, in Ohio, in New Jersey, and they're having viewing parties of this briefing right now. Around the country, there is a very, very loud chorus calling for change. The ask is simple: pass SESTA. Now, for me, this journey started actually 6 years ago. I was a New York City prosecutor at the time, and I received a call very late at night. A young girl was being pulled out of a trafficking situation. I threw on some clothes, hopped in a taxi, and went straight to the hospital. When I met this young girl, we'll call her Ani, at the hospital, she was being treated for an array of sexually transmitted diseases, and the bruises all over her body ranged from fresh and new to faded and forgotten. Now, each time the nurse came in and went to issue her an injection, she started wailing and crying and screaming, the way that many of you might actually see with your own children. And this moment made me think that although this kid had experienced more trauma than any adult should experience in a lifetime, she was just that. She was a child. She was a little girl. For the next several days, I unpacked her case. Her story was the all too common story that we hear so often about rape, brutal beatings, coercion, and horrific exploitation. And in building my case against Ani's trafficker, I spent hours scrolling on a website that 6 years ago I didn't know well. The website was Backpage.com. I was stunned as I was staring at the computer screen, thousands of ads scrolling down, watching woman after woman, girl after girl who was being sold on this website. The year was 2012. Right around this time, there was a very abrupt shift that was happening. And the shift that was happening was that women and girls who were at one point being sold on the streets were now being sold online. Literally overnight, every girl that I worked with was being sold online. Pimps were posting these women like products and buyers were buying these women and girls from the comfort of their living room. And these websites were making millions. For Ani and the countless others, the website served as a gateway to brutal beatings and repeated rapes. And for the websites that profited, they were making millions of dollars off of the backs of exploited people. I remember thinking to myself at the time, this is the biggest racket going, and we need to do something about it. And this was in 2012, before any of us had uttered the words Twitter or Instagram. Well, friends, I can say with certainty that for the last 6 years, this situation has not gotten better. It's gotten worse. Today, most of the $99 billion sex trade relies on the internet to recruit and sell people. Between 2010 and 2015, reports of online sex trafficking has increased by 800,000%. Let that sink in. These websites are making millions for their role in criminal conduct, and it's all just legal. The current US law is basically a get-out-of-jail-free card for websites that sell and profit from exploitation. How is this possible? Because of an archaic law that was crafted at a time when the dial-up internet took you 10 minutes just to get on it. Remember those days? Well, 22 years later, it's time for a change. It's time to close the legal loophole that allows websites to skirt accountability for knowingly facilitating sex trafficking. It is time to give survivors the recourse that they deserve. It's time to stop putting profit over people. And it's time to create a world without exploitation. And so we collectively are here today to call on Congress to pass SESTA. Is Senator Portman and Okay. Senator Portman, can we hold you for 1 minute and roll the PSA? So we have a very exciting PSA that Mary Mazzio put together with Sanctuary for Families and World Without Exploitation. And it features Seth Meyers, Amy Schumer, Malak Rock, who's here with us, Josh Charles, for you football fans, DeBrickashaw Ferguson, and many others. And without further ado, here we go.
I know right now you feel like you're watching a PSA and you're like, another PSA with people saying things monotone, looking sad into the camera, but this is actually really, really messed up. Today, you can go online and buy a child for sex. It's as easy as ordering a pizza.
It is inconceivable to me that this is happening here in this country.
Thousands of children are raped every day.
I was not aware. I had no idea.
I'm totally shocked and flabbergasted.
It's all just a click away.
It's happening on the hour.
By the hour.
24/7.
24/7.
24/7.
This is a crisis.
It happens in every town and every city across America.
Even your city.
They call it sex trafficking, which is a sanitized term for serial rape.
It is slavery, and
this is really scary.
It's barbaric. It's outrageous.
It's horrifying.
And the websites where they're advertised, they make millions and millions of dollars every year. It's all about the money.
And they're allowed to advertise it online because of a stupid loophole, so it's legal.
It's legal.
It can no longer be legal to advertise children for sex, period.
This is the dark side of technology.
It's unacceptable.
It's a human rights issue.
What if this was your daughter? What if this was your son? It's up to us to stop it.
This cannot continue.
These girls have dreams, and they want so much more.
Survivors who sometimes call themselves Jane Doe are now fighting back.
Fighting to change this law.
And we need to stand with them.
Listen to survivors.
Listen to survivors.
Listen to survivors.
To survivors.
The law should be changed so that children are protected with the same vigor that the websites are protected.
Let's do something now.
These websites must be held accountable.
Please help.
We must stand together to fight this.
Call your congressperson or senator and say, what the
Ask them to amend Section 230.
and then call them again until they do something.
Please call yours.
Will you call yours? It could have been me.
It could have been me.
I am Jane Doe.
I am Jane Doe.
I am Jane Doe.
I am Jane Doe.
So several years ago, when a number of survivors could not get justice in the courtroom, these three senators came together and said, we are going to create a legislative fix. We are so immensely grateful for your leadership, Senator Portman, Senator Blumenthal, and Senator McCaskill. And now it's my great honor to introduce to you SESTA's greatest champion, Senator Portman.
Okay, here's the truth. It's the survivors in this room today who have gotten us to this point. So I'm happy to stand today with Kubicki pride. I'm happy to stand today. Would you stand, please? Because I'm going to stand with you. You got to stand with me. Kubicki came before our committee during a 18-month, very intense, very emotional investigation that Claire McCaskill and I undertook as part of the permanent subcommittee investigations. And she told her story. And Yvonne Ambrose did the same thing in front of the Commerce Committee. Where Senator Blumenthal and I got to hear her incredibly powerful statements about her daughter, 16 years old, as I recall, raped on Christmas Eve 2016 after being on Backpage. And her comment was simply, she never should have been online being sold for sex. She never should have been there. And there was hardly a dry eye in the room. And that's why we're here today with 65 senators supporting SESTA. Now, it didn't hurt that a former Olympian and prize-winning filmmaker named Marian Mazzio wrote a little piece that ended up being called I Am Jane Doe. Because that raised awareness. And, you know, I was on CNN this morning talking about this issue. Of course, they wanted to ask about every other issue except this issue. And I did. I thanked them for them publicizing I Am Jane Doe and what they have done. But, you know, part of this is just people don't know. They really don't know. My constituents don't know. When I'm home and I talk about it, they kind of look at me. That happens in Africa and Asia, right? No, it's happening in your backyard, right here. In Columbus, and Cleveland, and Toledo, and Cincinnati, and in both of the states, Missouri and Connecticut. Every single senator needs to be engaged and involved in this because this is an outrage that is happening in this country, in this century. It's a stain on our national character. We can make a difference here. And your being here today and promoting this specific legislative change will make a huge difference. Now, is it the only answer? No. We've got to continue to raise awareness. We've got to continue. I was on Friday in Columbus, Ohio, and I met with a survivor, and you know, the connection between opioids and this issue is so strong now. Even if we were successful in wiping Backpage off the internet, it would still be an issue. But listening to experts from all around the country, as Claire and I did in the permanent subcommittee, as Richard and I have at the Commerce Committee hearing, what they say is that this has moved, as victims have told us many times, from the street corner to the smartphone, and that is where you see this explosion, this increase. It's so dramatic. Yes. We can help there, right, Kubicki? Right, Yvonne? We can help there because it's a matter of changing the federal law. So when you're talking to members today, just tell them it's your responsibility to change a federal law that actually provides an immunity to evil websites that sell women and children online without any accountability. That's all we're asking for. We're not trying to take down the freedom of the internet. As I said on the floor this week, Richard and I and Claire have all been talking to us, just the opposite. I think the freedom of the internet is going to be challenged unless we stand up and say these bad actors need to be held accountable, right? Yes. That's all we're talking about. So push back. You know, we've got some folks out there that still are not with us, and they're pretty powerful. You've seen what the House legislation ended up doing, which missed the target. It missed the mark. Would we be happy to have more causes of action and other ways to deal with it? Of course, but that's not the issue here. The issue here is how do you stop this increase we're seeing that all the experts agree with the survivors telling us this is the issue we need to be addressing, and with the need for us to act urgently so that more girls, more women, more innocent people's lives aren't taken down this dark path. And the trauma that results, as I saw with this woman on Friday, and I know the survivors here know what I'm talking about, and those of you who work in this field, she is not only addicted to heroin and opioids and fentanyl, she also has this trauma that is going to be with her the rest of her life. She's going to come out the other end, I'm convinced. She's a brave young woman. But wow, to avoid that for the next generation, for the other girls and women and boys who are out there today, if we can do something, it's our responsibility to do it. Good luck today. Let's get this passed.
My name is Richard Blumenthal. I'm a senator from Connecticut, and I'm very proud to be very proud to be the lead Democratic co-sponsor on this measure. And I want all of the women who participated in the opening, my colleagues missed it, but I'd like all of you to please stand so we can give you another round of applause. Everybody. And I want to be very blunt. I love Rob Portman, but, you know, it's the women who are getting this done in this country. And I want to particularly salute Claire McCaskill, who is a former prosecutor, who has devoted herself tirelessly. But we men have a role too, right? And I want to be bluntly political here. There is nothing partisan about this bill. Those 65 are from both sides of the aisle. They span the ideological spectrum. There is nothing partisan or political. This measure is about saving lives. It is about saving lives. And right now, prostitution is against the law. The act of pimping and sex selling is against the law. But advertising it on the internet, fine. And that is wrong. Now, you heard earlier the reference to this provision of law that provides a shield against legal action for the websites as archaic. Well, it's only about 21 years. For me, that's not exactly archaic. But in the life of the internet, it is archaic. because this provision was designed initially when the internet was in its infancy, when it needed protection against a deluge of lawsuits that people felt might endanger the growth of the internet. Right now, these websites are big, powerful, wealthy, and some of them are resisting this change. And some of them have stopped this measure in the past. And they need to be told the people want this change. They want this measure passed to unlock the courthouse doors. That's what this measure does. Very simply, it gives the survivors their day in court. It gives the survivors it gives the survivors something we all take for granted, that when we are wronged, we can go to court and we can hold accountable the person or the corporation or the special interest that has wronged us. And almost uniquely, this provision, 230, bars the courthouse doors. It provides a shield and near absolute immunity to those special interests, the websites that have resisted. Now, I want to say, in deference to them, many have now come over the right side. But we need to make sure that we get the right bill done, not just a bill, but the right bill. The survivors are the ones whose courage has made it possible for us to get this far. The survivors are the ones who are going to be the private attorneys general. They are going to be the warriors in court who will help hold accountable these websites that continue to make vast profits by enabling the sex sellers to profit. And I'll just say one last thing. I got involved in this battle more than a decade ago when I was Attorney General of the state of Connecticut. And we went after MySpace, then we went after Craigslist. There's some folks in this room who may not even remember who they were. And we have fought again and again and again, but we need to bring closure to this battle. We need to win this battle. We need to make it possible for survivors to go to court, to win their battles, so that they are compensated, not just financially, but morally and emotionally, so that they can win these battles for themselves in a court of law and hold accountable the people who profit from their pain. I am very hopeful that we can do the Senate bill, that we can overcome some of the resistance in the House of Representatives that, again, I'm just being blunt, produced a bill that, in fact, I think is inadequate because it fails to give that right of action to the survivors. It's that blunt. And with your help, we're going to win this battle. And I just want to again thank Senator Portman for his leadership and introduce to you one of the great champions of this cause, my colleague and friend, Claire McCaskill of Missouri.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, first and most importantly, I'm very proud of so many Missourians, but I couldn't be more proud of Kabuki and the journey she's traveled with her daughter. This is not about us. It's about you. It's about a 14-year-old girl that is somewhere along I-44 today having sex at a truck stop, courtesy of their online pimp, facilitated by a website that the law allows to operate with impunity. This is about that 14-year-old girl. And the most important message I want to give you is that righteousness and truth has power. And we're going to get this bill through the Senate. I will tell you that. I am confident we will get this bill through the Senate, right? We will. But here's my challenge to you. As someone who labored in the courtroom for years, holding the hands of survivors, telling them I believe them, fighting my own office to get their cases into the courtroom. This was back in the day where I had to sit in a room with fellow prosecutors and have our boss tell us we couldn't take a rape case to trial because the woman had an IUD in. That somehow that was an invitation to assault. That happened to me as a very young prosecutor, as the only woman assistant prosecutor in the office in Kansas City in the late 70s. This is about intent. As a prosecutor, that is a very, very important key point of the law. And what happened in the House is they gave these guys a pass by putting in the law a level of intent that will be impossible for victims and survivors and their families to seek justice. We cannot let this sleight of hand that occurred end up in the final bill. And so the real challenge I give to you today is not just to we're down to 35 senators who aren't co-sponsors. Go find them, buttonhole them, and tell them you're not going away, tell them that justice will prevail. But importantly, to all the senators, say you've got to hold the line. We've got to make sure we make the House understand that we will not accept a watered-down version of SESTA. We will not. Allowing someone to take action when one of these websites knowingly allows these advertisements is plenty of protection for anybody who runs online sites. That's plenty of protection, and that's what this bill provides. That we have to prove knowingly, not with intent to do it. That's going to be really, really difficult, guys. So I want you to stay focused on that goal, because I think it's probably the most important challenge we face right now. And finally, I want to thank both Dick Blumenthal, but I really want to thank Rob. He and I began on the journey of trying to get to the bottom of online trafficking back in April of 2015. And we encountered the behemoth known as Backpage. And you know what Backpage thought? That we couldn't reach them. They actually believed that Rob Portman and Claire McCaskill were not going to reach them. That they weren't going to have to appear, they weren't going to have to give documents, that the law protected them so thoroughly that the United States Senate couldn't touch them. And I want you to know, Rob Portman wouldn't give up. I wouldn't give up. Our colleagues in the Senate backed us 100%. We made them go all the way to the Supreme Court, and we kicked their ass. So we were able to prove for the very first time that they knowingly were trafficking children on Backpage. Knowingly. They were facilitating it. They were assisting with it. We were able to prove that through our ability to finally hold them accountable, to give us the documentation that investigators, prosecutors, and attorney generals all over the country had been seeking. Now we've opened the door. Together with you, we're going to walk through it into a much brighter day for all of you, all of our families, and most importantly, all of the young women in this country. God bless you all, and let's go get them.
Are we inspired? Yes. Are we ready to do this? Okay. Our next speaker is a real champion on this issue. He's been doing this for a very long time. Kevin Ryan is the CEO of Covenant House and works every single day on behalf of our most vulnerable children who are most often the targets of this type of exploitation, and specifically online exploitation. So thank you so much, Kevin, for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thank you. Thank you. I'm the beggar-in-chief at Covenant House. That's more like what I really do. And I'm so grateful to be in this movement with you. This Me Too movement is galvanizing the country, but I have to tell you that their faces and their voices might not have been on the front page of Time magazine, but the Me Too movement includes girls and women, many of them homeless, whose sexual exploitation and victimization over many years by older men whose exploitation flourishes like a cancer has been possible because power in this country shrugs off harassment and exploitation. It disrespects human life. It commodifies youth. But this movement speaks a new truth. Last year, researchers from Loyola University and the University of Pennsylvania released the largest studies ever on the prevalence of human trafficking among young people who faced homelessness in this country. 911 randomly selected young people who were homeless. 1 in 5 had survived human trafficking. 1 in 5. And the least interesting thing about these kids is that they're homeless. They're students, and they're artists, and they're apprentices, and they're sons and daughters, and they're all brimming with promise and hope. But that darkness looms over them because the sustained, permitted, commercial sexual exploitation of them all loomed large in their lives. And the truth is, many of these young people became victims because they were without shelter, because they were hungry, because their families in some instances had turned them out because of addiction. In some instances, young people were simply primed for the picking by pimps and johns and gangs who use their online conspiracy with website proprietors to just line up a queue of young people for ongoing commercial sexual exploitation. I've come to the Senate today to give Senator Leader Mitch McConnell the names of thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans from coast to coast asking for him to bring this SESTA bill to the floor for a vote now. And there is a new dawn coming. There's a new day coming. But that day is not going to come if we simply sit back, because that sun is being pushed down hard, never to appear on the horizon, by the most lucrative criminal enterprise this organization, this movement has ever confronted, with deep pockets, well-represented, entrenched voices, whispering quite effectively on the House side to gut this legislation. This new dawn, this new day, this horizon, it only breaks with a sun that gets lifted up and pushed forward by the voices of young women, girls, and in some instances, boys and young men who have been exploited online and who know that this country owes them and a generation to come so much more. Let's get this bill done.
Come on up. Okay, we're going to now move into a panel discussion, and I'm going to work to move this back so that I can see the panelists. I just need a chair. That's better. Okay. How we doing? Good? All right, terrific. So I am really, really excited for this portion of the program. Before you are some of the fiercest activists and some of the smartest women I know. And we're going to have a conversation about SESTA, about FOSTA, about what this issue really looks like, and then we will turn it over. Is that me? Okay. I got it. Okay. I thought it was my phone or my kids or my something going on. So I asked these amazing women for their bios, and I said, can you provide me with 1 or 2 paragraphs? And I got 1 or 2 pages from each of them. And that is because each one of them has done just extraordinary, extraordinary work over the last many years. So instead of me introducing them, I think I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So just tell us a little bit about you, how and how you come to this work and specifically this bill. Carol, we'll start with you.
Oh, wow. My name is Carol Robles Rahman. I am the President and CEO of Legal Momentum, the Women's Legal Defense and Education Fund. I'm the former Deputy Mayor for Legal Affairs and counsel to Michael Bloomberg for 12 years, where I oversaw 12 agencies. And one of the areas that, when Lauren was describing the explosion that was taking place and they were seeing the online traffic, I was one of the people that had the privilege to work with this. And I am her biggest PR agent, and I'm going to ask for a cut because I saw her...
A cut of nothing.
I saw her take this on in an office that was creating really the model for the rest of the country. And so with her help and the help of many other people, we launched Let's Call an End to Human Trafficking. And so it was watching the advocates, having them come to City Hall, who I did not believe, I will say that right now, and I've said that publicly, and I thought it was a sham. So I went to Covenant House, and I went to several places, you know, like undercover CEO. I was undercover deputy mayor, and I met these girls, and I came back to City Hall, and I came back to law enforcement and PD and saying, this is real, and this is illegal. And they were saying, well, so that's how I came to it.
I'm Marian Hatcher, and first and foremost, I am a grateful survivor of human trafficking. Officially, however, I am here representing the Sheriff of Cook County, Thomas J. Dart, my employer, for the last 13 plus years. Long story short, I had a seemingly normal life, college education, degree in finance from Loyola University, 3 major corporations, domestic violence reared its ugly head, drugs got included in that. Next thing you know, prostitution's introduced. And to keep you safe, Big Daddy shows up. That's how you end up trafficked. 80% of those who are involved in prostitution have been trafficked at some point in their experience. That research this is just a fact. So you cannot separate prostitution from trafficking. Just want to give you that lesson 101. The last 13 years, I've been empowered by the Sheriff's Office and given the opportunity to not only represent those who have walked the same walk, either before me, with me, or come after me, but I've been empowered by the Sheriff of Cook County to bring the message that law enforcement works best when they work side by side with us.
I'm Yasmin Bhava. I'm co-founder and executive director of Rights for Girls, which is a national human rights organization based here in Washington, D.C., dedicated to ending sex trafficking and gender-based violence against young women and girls in the United States. Our organization has worked over the last several years with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle to pass a number of federal laws aimed at providing funding for victims of sex trafficking and human trafficking who are United States citizens, as well as working to reform the child welfare system to better recognize child sex trafficking in our foster care systems. We also work to promote juvenile justice reform and criminal justice reform that has a gender and racial justice lens, understanding that too often in this country our young women and girls are criminalized for their experiences of violence and exploitation through what we call the sexual abuse to prison pipeline. And so we worked really hard to educate members here, as well as the public, on the lives of our most marginalized girls, believing that when our policies are crafted to meet their needs, then it follows that everyone else in society's needs are met. And we've been working on this legislation in the Senate for the last several years with many of the members that you heard from today.
Good morning. My name's Mary Mazzio. I'm the writer and director of the documentary I Am Jane Doe, which features a few people in the audience. And that came about, I come to this issue, I'm a recovering lawyer, which is highly irritating to those around me. And I read a story in the Boston Globe a few years ago about Jane Doe number 1, Jane Doe number 2, and Jane Doe number 3, who were suing Backpage because they had been bought and sold on Backpage.com at the ages of 14, 15, and 16 years old. And I remember thinking, how is this happening 10 minutes from where I live? What is going on here? Number one. Number two, the more I dove into it, the more I understood, like many Americans, I had assumed it was offshore, it happened every now and again. I was blown away by the scope and the breadth of this problem. Thousands and thousands of children are sold every day online. And the third piece that really drew me in was the fact that the children filed their case. They were represented by Ropes and Gray, an extraordinary law firm, and they lost. And that court case went all the way up to the Supreme Court. We jump in, we start following it in real time, and the Senate investigation into online sex trafficking erupts in the middle of all of this. And basically, the court told the children, we're so sorry, but we must dismiss your case, even if Backpage was in effect a co-conspirator in the crime of child sex trafficking. If they knowingly facilitated your damage, sorry, there's nothing we can do. An egregious decision. But the court also said, go to Congress. Get this fixed. Our hands are tied. And so we followed the journey of those children and many other children around the country that were battling Backpage. And it is their voices, it's Yvonne, it's Kubicki, it's all of the survivors that flew in today. Those voices have been amplified, as you can see today. Your voices have reached Blumenthal, Portman, McCaskill, McCain, and many, many others. And it is so extraordinary to see you speak truth to power, you reclaiming your voices. And now it's time to bring this over the finish line.
Fantastic.
Oh, can I say one other thing?
Of course.
The PSA that you saw, we're so sorry that those in the back may not have had, we had some audio problems. It is online now. Amy Schumer just tweeted. Olivia Wilde just tweeted. Julianne Moore just tweeted. Seth Meyers just tweeted. So we urge you to tweet, retweet, Facebook, Insta, Snapchat. What are you kids doing these days? I don't know.
You hit him.
Yeah.
You hit him. Maybe it was a blessing in disguise that you couldn't hear it, because what we want you to do is go online after this briefing, watch up close and personal, and then share it with your networks. So it was a good thing, Mary. It was a good thing that we had audio problems. Yes.
And all you have to do is search hashtag I am Jane Doe. It will pop up. Look for Amy Schumer. Hashtag listen to survivors. It should pop up there too.
So that's what we're going to do. But let's take a step back. And I want to do this as a conversation. So people should feel free to jump in at any point. But I want to start with you, Marian, because you are working in law enforcement right now. You're on the ground, in the trenches. Can you frame the issue for us? We know what the legislative fix is, but we want to understand the issue. So I know you have some good statistics. Frame the issue for us.
Sure. Well, 13 and a half years ago, plus, in my journey, I was involved in street prostitution, and there wasn't much conversation about using the internet or any tools like that on a regular basis. You're either a street prostituted individual or you were supposed to be a high-end, call girl type of situation, which involved technology, but it was a telephone, probably one with a cord. You move now to me now working for the sheriff's office and the increase in the interest because of the number of women coming into Cook County Jail with the charge of prostitution and the increased interest on a national level by the National Institute of Justice, people taking a look at what's going on in terms of demand, and other spokespersons for and philanthropists, Ambassador Swanee Hunt, you have Linda Smith and many, many more, and then the sheriff getting involved. What happened was we started taking a look at the National Child Suppression Initiative through a different lens. When we first launched it, the pilot, 64% of the arrests that were made were street prostitution arrests for buyers. This is a buyer operation. We provide services for the women. We don't play that other crap.
And the other crap?
The other crap meaning that as of this past summer, it is the policy of the second largest sheriff's office and the largest single site jail in the country that we do not arrest prostituted women. We divert 100% to services. That's the other crap.
I wanted you to spell that out.
I'm glad, right? Thank you. So the importance of this is that we piloted the National Child Suppression Initiative in October 2011. By the 9th sting, and I can't get, I still have like foggy brain sometimes, but by the 9th sting operation, 76% of the arrests made were via the internet. Hundreds and hundreds, and we have arrested as many as 1,300 sex buyers in one operation. We now have 101 arresting agencies as partners and over 200 complete partners when you look at all levels of federal government, the law enforcement, everybody. But that's a big number. We've arrested nearly 8,000 sex buyers in 14 operations as of this past summer. 7,636 men have been held accountable in some way as a result of the increased interest in the buy-in of law enforcement at all levels, that this is a demand-driven human rights violation, and that the other side of it needs to be exit services for those victimized, whether it be minors or adults. So the one thing I would say that's attached to that, that's not a statistic though, is that the many, many minors that we have rescued under many different circumstances, working in this area, dealing with the national operation, but on a local level, I had to be notified that an internet third party not being held accountable, whatever you want to call it, victim of that innocuous underworld needed my help. I don't see her because I don't have my glasses on. She's somewhere. Yvonne? I was asked to help Yvonne Ambrose deal with the fact that her 16-year-old child had had her throat cut in Markham, Illinois, in my jurisdiction, and try to help her. How do you help someone who's had their baby taken from them? Before her, I had the honor of knowing Kubiki Pride and working with her. I am the adult, I got different hair on y'all, but I am the adult version of I Am Jane Doe in the movie, so you might not recognize me, many people, depending on my hair. But
she's in it.
I'm in it. You might notice it from this side, my clergy credentials. But Kubiki and I have known each other a long time as well, and the reason I bring them up is because this is while I went through what I went through, and I'm also a proud member of Space International, United States of America member, along with Vanita Carter in the room, my sister Cherie Jimenez, and Burris. I think that we're the only ones who are here from space. But we have been through what we've been through, my other sisters in the room, whatever their story, but to deal with mothers, because I remember the pain of my family when I came back from I was missing for 2 years. Okay, they didn't know if I was one of the stories and found in a dumpster, that they watched on the nightly news. But these women, this girl had to buy her own baby back. Are you aware that Kubiki had to go on that internet provider and buy her own child that she gave birth to back? Yvonne didn't have that opportunity to get her baby back. And she had to show me, instead of showing me a beautiful bedroom where she had, you know, her baby love Hello Kitty. She didn't show me her new bedroom yesterday for the baby with Hello Kitty all over the room. She showed me a headstone. That's the reality. That's as best as I can do.
Well, that you did. You definitely did, and that was powerful. Mary, can you shape this out for us in terms of, you know, we heard from Marian this just raw, powerful reality of how exploitation is impacting people. Can you round this out for us and talk a little bit about what you saw, what you heard, and connect the dots in terms of what's happening on the reality that's happening online?
So, as you heard powerfully from Marian, and as the survivors in the room will attest, this is often a person-breaking crime. And we're getting calls, ever since I Am Jane Doe came out, we're getting calls from affluent communities, we're getting calls from rural communities. My daughter was LGBTQ. My son had anxiety. My daughter was adopted. My child has an opioid problem. They have been recruited and preyed upon and victimized and exploited. This is happening in every nook and cranny across the country. And of course, it's hidden in plain sight, and it's really only recently that people have been talking about it. In the course of this legislation, you heard Senator Blumenthal refer to a sleight of hand in the House. And for those of you that may not know exactly what's happening in the House, Ann Wagner was an early supporter of amending Section 230 to end this immunity for these online bad actors. And we all applauded her. We were thrilled that she was fighting the fight. And about a month ago, her bill disappeared, vanished, poof, gone. And in its place was something that appeared to be drafted by a tech lobby that effectively stripped all survivors, all civil litigants, from their day in court. So you heard one of the senators mention the courthouse doors remain locked to justice. And that sleight of hand is what we're here to combat today. It is my hope. Let me tell you the most surprising thing that I learned in making I Am Jane Doe. And that is, we dug into all of the papers, all of the litigation papers, and discovered that Backpage had very powerful allies. They had been embraced and legitimized by Google-funded groups. Let me say that again. A company whose motto was "Don't be evil" was supporting Backpage's legal defense. It is my hope that we are not seeing the long arm of Google try and disrupt any change to this immunity in the House. We are thrilled that Sheryl Sandberg, that Safra Katz from Oracle, and other extraordinary women are leading the way for change with the Senate bill. The Senate bill is a compromise bill. It has every stakeholder involved. It was compromised. Is it perfect? Would we love to make it easier to try these cases? Hello, hashtag yes. It's still going to be really, really hard. But it's a compromise bill. It is a start, and it's historic.
Yeah.
And yet in the House, this sleight of hand, which we hope was not engineered but behind the scenes by the likes of Google, somebody is up to something. And when you heard these senators be very diplomatic, like, please stop what the House is doing, there is nefarious intent happening in the House. And we need your help to contact every member of the House to say, stop this hashtag profanity. This bill that is a replacement bill, it is substandard, it is smoke and mirrors, it is a poison pill. Please pick up the delicate balance that all of the stakeholders have weighed in on in the Senate bill, which is SESTA. Pick it up and bring it home.
Yes.
Did I connect the dots?
Yes.
Okay.
And yes.
Oh, one other thing. This bro culture that we're seeing now in the technology fields, right? You're seeing sex parties. You're seeing buyer stings in Silicon Valley. There is a pervasive attitude towards women that is all part of the Me Too movement. And these children are the most deserving of the Me Too campaign.
That's true.
So I have about 48 things to respond to. First, I want to just say we need to go to the House side and have conversations. We're doing that. So for those of you who are staying all day with us and lobbying, we are not lobbying on the Senate side. We will go to every single office on the House side today. So that's happening. I could talk for a while, but I'm actually going to kick this over to Carol because what I need to understand a little bit better, why are we failing in the courtroom? What is it about this law? Why, when we sue Backpage.com, when survivors courageously come forward and sue Backpage.com, why are we failing time and time again? And I know Legal Momentum has these cases, is bringing these cases, is fighting these cases, and doing amazing work, and yet we keep losing. Help us understand it, and then we'll move to Yasmin to talk about what needs to happen next.
So I'll be repeating some of the points that I made in I Am Jane Doe, which I get a lot of flack for because, frankly, what I come out saying is the judges are wrong more often than not.
You were more explicit than that, Carol.
I was, but, there's a camera rolling here, and I got into a lot of trouble the first time. No. The fact of the matter...
It's on Netflix, for God's sake.
No, I'm kidding. My husband's a judge. That's why I say that. No, that's the only trouble that I was worried about. The fact of the matter is, Lauren, we are at the very, very beginning of a movement. We're starting from almost a ground zero position. And for those of us that were here 30, 35 years ago in the movement when we started creating civil rights, different mechanisms for victims of violence to pursue justice that was not just with the police officer, wasn't just going to a prosecutor. We created other avenues through orders of protections, through family justice centers. So we are now recognizing that there have to be civil remedies for victims of trafficking. And the victims are the survivors, the victims are the cities, the victims are the covenant houses that have to provide these services, that must provide these services. They are victimized as well. So who is looking for how to do civil remedies? You are. SESTA is, but it has not been done before. So we're in an education process, and we're creating this for the very first time. So when there's only been a handful of lawsuits that have been brought, and I will tell you that it's very brave of the folks that came. Legal Momentum started working on this 3 years ago before there had been, I think, maybe one case filed. And I will tell you, just for those of you that are not lawyers, it's very hard to bring a lawsuit when there aren't a lot other of them out there. Oh, how are you going to win? Nobody else has done this. But you look at this is a slam friggin' dunk.
Yeah,
I mean, this is not very hard. But then we see the second lawsuit, and then we see the third lawsuit, and then we see the fourth lawsuit. And in a nutshell, and I think Mary described it very well, but in a nutshell, the judges are saying that the Communications Decency Act 230 creates immunity. First of all, the word immunity never appears in the statute, but okay, we'll turn around and we'll ignore that. Now, for those of you that haven't seen the movie and what she does elucidate, and for those of us that are in courtrooms, some judges are not so good on these issues. All right, I think that's about as good as I'm gonna put it. And this overbroad interpretation, in our legal opinion, and what we have argued, and we have filed amicus briefs on the Supreme Court in the First Circuit case, is that the judges' interpretations are wrong. Now, that said, we can say that till the cows come home. We need clarification. We need to make sure it's crystal clear that victims of online trafficking, that survivors, that cities, that states, that attorney generals that want to bring these lawsuits are not going to be turned around into legal knots while the judges' clerks hold up the immunity sign in their decisions. And so that's why this bill is very important. Now, I sat down, like the good bureaucrat lawyer that I am, and I read FOSTA. And if you're not looking and you're not picking out the weeds, you say, damn, this sounds pretty darn good. Sign me up. Well, it's not good for me, and it's not good for my client, and it's not good for the girls that I want to represent, that I refuse to say no to. And we will continue to bring these lawsuits. We need also to have clarity, and we need to speak clearly that bad actors are not protected by federal law. People whose very business model is to knowingly, now, Senator McCaskill's discussion was spot on, the difference between knowingly and with intent. But these folks know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly how they're doing it. And the numbers are going like this. They are skyrocketing. You speak to any social services commissioner, and we have traveled the country speaking to many of them, would love to start looking at this type of work and looking at litigation strategies to stop this online violence now.
Carol, can I add one other thing? You were talking about the House bill. There are arguments that the House bill is good for prosecutors. In fact, one of the largest states' attorneys general has analyzed FOSTA and has concluded that it's more harmful than good, and that very few states will take advantage of any tool that's in there because they don't think they can file a criminal action against Backpage with FOSTA as written. So we believe that it's a poison pill. Somebody in here is sort of trolling me, I see right now, like all these prosecutors are in favor of FOSTA. Really, look on the bill and see who's in support. It's mostly technology companies and a sprinkling of a law enforcement here and there. You will see no advocate. You will not see Facebook. You will not see any advocate or survivor or victim support, and that's who this bill is purported to benefit.
So we know FOSTA is not the answer.
Exactly.
We know that FOSTA, as it currently exists, is not the answer. But we have a good bill. We have a good solution on the Senate side, SESTA. And so I'm hoping, Yasmin, you can walk us through the bill, help us understand why this is the best answer.
Sure. So, I think SESTA, it's important to note that it was the result of a really long and thoughtful process, really careful negotiations between a number of major Senate offices that came together that really listened to survivors and victim advocates that understood, because the internet has really created an explosion in the commercial sex industry, that this was too big of a problem for the feds to handle alone, that we really needed the full scope of legal remedies for survivors to be able to attain justice. So that means not only federal law, but state law, civil and criminal law. And so they came together over the course of actually many years. I know Rights for Girls has been working with Senator Blumenthal on this and different strategies for at least 3 years, and Senator Portman has also been really active on this. But those two offices, Senator McCaskill, Senator Cornyn, Senator Heitkamp, and McCain, came together, those 6 offices, and really listened to the whole diverse array of stakeholders, all the relevant players, and came up with this very narrowly tailored amendment to the Communications Decency Act for sex trafficking as defined by the federal law. So what we now know as a result of SESTA is that it would result in state governments being able to seek justice on behalf of victims of sex trafficking against sites that knowingly facilitate sex trafficking. And as mentioned numerous times, knowingly is an incredibly high mens rea standard. We are aware that that's a very difficult standard, but it's important. And in good faith compromise, advocates and survivors were willing to concede to a knowingly standard, although many of us were pushing for reckless disregard. And it also allows for victims and survivors of sex trafficking to push for civil remedies against those sites, which is really important, and that's something that the House bill as it stands currently lacks. What FOSTA does is really maintain the status quo. There's only liability for content generators, which is what the law has already been. And there's also no civil remedy. And in that failure, survivors that we work with have told us that it's an inadequate response. And so SESTA, it's really important to realize when it went to the Senate Commerce Committee, there was another really thoughtful process of negotiations, really good faith compromises. A number of internet advocates testified before the Senate Commerce Committee, voicing a few technical concerns that they felt might unfairly punish some good actors. And so the advocates and the drafters came together and really further refined the language to the point where the Internet Association, which is the largest trade group that represents companies like Google, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, Facebook themselves, Oracle, IBM, Hewlett-Packard, and many other tech groups actually endorsed SESTA. So as it stands, we have a legislative vehicle in the Senate that is supported by all the major constituents, not only the tech groups, but the major Internet Association and Facebook, but also the victim advocates, the survivors, law enforcement. And so really this whole move with FOSTA and the FOSTA substitute kind of came out of left field, because to many of us who've been working on this for the last year and a half, if not longer, we finally had reached this point as a result of long and good faith compromise. And we really feel like SESTA is the right path forward. Again, noting that it's a very difficult standard for us to achieve, we felt like it was an important step forward. And to the point, I would really welcome folks to take a look at the Internet Association's endorsement. They thank the drafters for their very careful process of negotiation, and they actually say that they feel that SESTA has struck the appropriate balance in maintaining survivors' rights to seek justice while protecting good actors in the tech ecosystem. So why would the Internet Association endorse a bill that's the end of the Internet? And I think something else that people really fail to point out is, yes, SESTA, yes, the CDA was passed in 1996. Yes, it was a time when the internet was in its infancy, but CDA already came with an exception. It has an exception for copyright protections. So for the last 20 years, if any one of us goes online and we post a clip of a movie or a music video, it's almost immediately taken down. And that hasn't stifled the growth of the internet. That hasn't been a monumental affront to free speech. But why is it that we as advocates have had to answer to survivors and their families for the last 20 or so years, telling them, for some reason, lawmakers and society think that copyright protection is more important than children and vulnerable people's lives? And I think that that's a really important question. And we're incredibly proud to have worked with the lawmakers here on the Senate side, and many in the House that we know are really champions for SESTA as well, and this approach, that we're willing to come forward and do the really hard work of coming up with a compromise solution. And so that's why we're here today, to really echo and amplify the voices of so many survivors and their families that are telling us this is what they want and this is what they need.
Great. Thanks. So I'm going to turn this over in just a minute to your questions. But before I do that, very quickly, team, we've got a captive audience who all are inspired and want to act today. What can people do? Carol, let's start with you.
Well, I'm going to say two things. Number one, obviously take your packets and reach out to your respective lawmakers. SESTA, yes. FOSTA, no. And number two, I am encouraging survivors to come forward with and speak to us about civil remedies.
Great.
I need more than like that. I need.
Go ahead. You do it.
So there's three things that I can't leave here without saying. The first thing is we have to remember that this is probably shined the most light that I've seen in my work on gender-based inequity, because I don't deal with inequality, because nothing, we can be equal on nothing, but there's gender inequity that is based on gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is part of the reason why it's okay to, take the copyright, mistake down and just give a shit, I'm sorry, but about a child that 21 years old, look, I'm gonna get my soapbox, 1 second. 21 years old or 18, you can't buy cigarettes, you can't buy liquor, but you can buy a baby before you put their first damn diaper on the internet. You can buy a child, but you put more stock in the fact that you can't. Do we want to go back to where we didn't have DUI laws? Do we want to go back to where you're smoking cigarettes? Do we want to go back? Do we want to go back? Obviously, what happened in 1996, it doesn't mean crap in 2018. But this is about people's lives. This is about people's lives. This is about humanity. This is about respect and dignity. In Chicago, 62%, in the study done by Jody Raphael, 62% enter the sex trade before the age of 18, 87% before the age of 21. We have to stop selling our children.
Yes.
Give them a chance. And remember, that 18th birthday doesn't change anything.
Correct.
For me, what I want you to do is to walk out of here knowing that there are no glass ceilings when it comes to this, because for me, 13 and a half years ago, convicted felon, God's given me what I needed, and Sheriff Darts empowered me and let me do stuff, gave me a great job and gave me great purpose. But on December 22nd, the governor, Republican governor of Illinois, granted me executive clemency to clear my criminal history. So walk out of here knowing SESTA will pass. SESTA will pass. I believe it in my heart, because I believed that I was going to one day get clemency. I did, and I didn't make it the most important thing. What I made the most important thing was Kubiki and her daughter. What I made the most important thing was the phone calls I get from DCFS asking me to go help a mentally handicapped child that's been trafficked. The horrors and the stories that we hear, we could go on and on and on, whether it be a child or whether it be an adult. These are human beings. Bring dignity and respect back to us.
You ready to follow that?
No, never read. So, I mean, I would just urge folks who are, fired up and impassioned. Today, we got to do two things. One is we have to urge Senate leadership, Leader McConnell, Senator Cornyn, who was an original drafter of the legislation, to bring this to the floor. The time is now. It's urgent. We have 65 bipartisan co-sponsors, and so really, we just have to get SESTA done in the Senate. And the other thing that I would urge is to urge our House leaders, right? House leadership, Leader McCarthy, Speaker Ryan, they've been absolutely incredible on the issue of domestic human trafficking for the last several years. Without Leader McCarthy, we would never have been able to get some of the more monumental pieces of legislation through at all and turn them into law. And so I trust that they really believe and want to do right by survivors. And so those are the two asks. Urge our Senate leaders to get this on the floor, and urge our House leaders to take up and pass the Senate bill, the one that has the most support from everyone that matters.
And I think I'll just round it out by saying how you can do that. There are a couple of sites. I am Jane Doe Film on our splash page. You can share the PSA. There's a rapid response tool to contact your member of Congress. Please watch it and act. Also on the World Without Exploitation site, ditto. So please use your voice on behalf of the trafficked adults, the victims, and the children that have been battling on the front lines for years now. We need your help. Thank you.
I have two more things that you can do right now. One, you can tweet. You can use your social media. The hashtag that we're using is #PassSESTA. Please, please, please make some noise on social media. And while you're on social media, pull up that PSA and share it and share it and share it again. And ask your friends, family, and anyone you know to share it. And then finally, in folders on the table, World Without Exploitation has crafted these postcards. They do everything for you. All you have to do is put your member on this, and you don't even have to put a stamp on it, because if you're here today, you can walk it right over to your own member. Sign it, walk it over, and tell them that you want to pass SESTA. Okay, we have about 5 minutes to open up to questions. Any questions? Go ahead.
Who are the men who are buying these girls?
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Great question.
And I have the answer for that. Quick. Real quick, primarily the profile of the male buyer is white male, married, with children, educated, at least high school, a lot of college, a lot of college, and a lot of grad school. Excuse me, and gainfully employed.
Go ahead.
Hi. I was just wondering, would SESTA include all U.S. territories? I'm here all the way from Puerto Rico representing the Ricky Martin Foundation.
Yay! Yeah.
But I was just wondering if it would fall, if U.S. territories would fall as well, because as you may know, in these territories also human trafficking occurs, and
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that raises an important point. It's not just Backpage.com. This problem is much bigger than Backpage.com. That is just the most obvious mainstream website, but there's tons of other websites. And yes, it's a federal law, so it would be applicable.
Great.
I don't have a question. I actually have a comment and I have a statement. And within the state of Texas, we came down here. We came here to support FOSTA, and Ann Wagner sold us out. And so she just left. Her representative just left the room. Caught her in the hall, had a few choice words. What I have to say is we're coming. We're coming to talk to you. My Dan, you better support SESTA in the House. Do not sell out the American people.
Wow.
Woo! Okay.
Yeah!
They're tough in Texas.
Oh my God.
Woo!
Texas is coming.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Well, before we wrap up, we started with the voices of survivors, and it seems only fitting to end with the voices of survivors. So thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to working together to pass SESTA. Or not. Can you help her? Okay. 1 minute of technical difficulties, but we will fix it. Well, actually, before you leave, if you are spending lobby day with us, please, after the video, when everybody else leaves, just if we can just sit tight for a few minutes, and we'll give you the rundown of the rest of the day and where you're going next. Oh, can we kill that light?
Dinner was strange and the day had been long. He sat at the head, true she was gone. Step and a smile, the uncomfortable while they were watching you. He's starting to smile, but my heart was breaking. My heart was breaking in two. 10 tiny little pieces. My heart was breaking. My heart was breaking in two. 10 tiny little pieces for you. Morning had come without warning. The sun shone softly like an old photograph. The house had been still like the strength of your will. Children singing their praise to the promise of better days. But my heart was breaking. My heart was breaking in two. 10 tiny little pieces. My heart was breaking. My heart was breaking in two. 10 tiny little pieces. My heart was breaking. My heart was breaking in two. 10 tiny little pieces. I hope you find the reasons for you.